I'm excited to talk with you guys today about one of my favorite topics in linguistics, phonetics. That's the study of speech sounds. And today we're going to talk about how different speech sounds are produced. Now, when we look at speech sounds from the world's languages, we can divide them into two broad categories. We've got some sounds have a major obstruction of airflow. Those sounds we call consonants. Other speech sounds don't have that major obstruction to airflow, and those ones we call vowels. In this video, we're going to talk about consonants, but I've got another video on vowels, so be sure to check out the link for that. So with consonants, there's three questions that we want to answer for any consonant in any of the world's languages. And so the first question that we want to answer is, we've got this major obstruction. What kind of obstruction of the airflow is it? We've got a couple different options. So we can completely stop the airflow. And so this would be a sound like a P sound or a T sound or a K sound in English. P, T, or K. We're completely closing off the airflow for a split second. And those sounds are called stops. Now, another option is that two articulators or two speech organs can get close together, but not totally cut off the airflow, but just create a really narrow channel for the air to flow through. Those sounds are called fricatives. So that would be like the V sound in English, or the S sound, S. There we're using the teeth and lips or the tongue to create just a really narrow channel of air, really narrow channel for the air to hiss through. Oh, a third type are called nasals. And so these sounds, we create an obstruction in the mouth, but we redirect the air and we open up there's like a trapdoor in the back of the mouth that lets air flow through our nose. So this would be English sounds like or the N sound or the M sound. There, we're not letting any air through the mouth, but we are letting air through the nose. This is also like humming, and the reason why you can't hum if your nose is plugged. There's a lot of different ways that consonants can obstruct the airflow. We've also got trills like brrr. We've got the English L sound where we obstruct the airflow in the middle of the vocal tract, but we let air flow around it. But if it's a consonant, it's going to have some sort of obstruction of the of the airflow through the vocal tract. Now, the second question that we want to answer, after we've answered the first question of what type of obstruction, or in other words, manner, the second question that we want to answer is the place of articulation. That is, where in the vocal tract is that obstruction happening? And anything is fair game from the vocal tract, from the voice box itself, all the way up to the lips. So you take a sound like M or P, you can see that I'm creating closure at my lips, a pa or a ma. Whereas in a sound like sa, I'm making closure not at the lips, but kind of right behind the teeth. We've got the first type of sound is called labials. Those are lip sounds where we've got some sort of obstruction happening at the lips. And then we've got teeth sounds or dentals. That's when we have the tongue touching the teeth. Now, if you think about your mouth, you've got the roof of your mouth, and if you keep putting your finger further and further back in your mouth, you'll get to a spot where the roof of your mouth gets soft, and it can make you gag if you're not careful. And that's called the soft palate or the velum. That's another place that we can make sounds, like the English K sound. The tongue reaches up and back to the velum to create a stop closure at the velum. So that's another place that we can create consonants. Okay, so we've got the manner of articulation. What type of obstruction is there? We've got the place of articulation. Where in the vocal tract is that obstruction happening? And then the third question is the question of voicing. That is whether the vocal folds are vibrating or not. So think with me for a minute about the voice box or the larynx. So that's the part that makes it sound like we're talking rather than whispering. And if you put your hand over your neck while you're speaking, you can often feel a vibration going on in this part of your body. So that vibration that you're feeling is the vibration of the vocal folds. So these are two really small flaps of skin that are held closely together. There's some very delicate muscles, very fine muscles that hold them just nearly touching each other so that when the air rushes through, they vibrate. And you can have, with a consonant, you can have the vocal hold either vibrating or not. So, for instance, you can take a sound like S. So, S doesn't have the vocal folds vibrating. You can put your hand here and you can feel S. Now compare that sound with Z. Z. The Z sound is essentially identical in all other respects, except that the vocal folds are vibrating during it. We find the same thing with F, the F sound, and V. If you alternate back and forth between them, you can feel the vocal folds vibrating for the V, but not for the F. Everything else stays the same. So, if you're looking at a consonant in another language, those are the 3 questions that you want to answer. You want to figure out what type of obstruction is there to the airflow? Where is that obstruction in the vocal tract? And what is happening with the vocal folds? Are they vibrating or not? And the good thing is that for most sounds in most languages that you're going to encounter, you're going to have 2 of those are going to be things that you're already familiar with. Maybe it's a voiced palatal fricative. You can already make fricatives and you can already make voice sound. You just have to learn a new place of articulation. A lot of times too, you can already make a sound at the place of articulation, and you can already do that manner, but maybe you're just not used to doing that particular manner of articulation, that particular type of obstruction, at that particular place. So start thinking about, if there's a sound that you're trying to learn, which sounds can you pronounce that are most similar? And then start thinking about, well, what can I play around with? Can I maybe adjust the place? Can I put my tongue a little further forward or a little further back? Does that get me closer to the sound that I'm going for? Or maybe I create, put the tongue a little higher or a little lower, or, move the lips to create a little more obstruction or a little less obstruction. Start playing around with that. And then, of course, play around with the voicing. Try it, voiced and voiceless. You can even ask speakers of the language to put their hand over their throat and tell you whether they're vibrating, whether it's vibrating during that sound. It doesn't always work, but you can try. So think about those 3 characteristics: manner of articulation, place of articulation, and voicing. And I think these will really help you in learning new consonant sounds.